This is the final seminar of Agroforestry in Barents Region, Galactic CPC project, and as all of us know, so we don't unfortunately have our Russian partners do the events in or the war between Russia and Ukraine. However, we are now able to present the main achievements and results what we have gained this far, and of course the analysis and reporting of the results will continue also after this meeting and the end of the project. The project will end officially in the end of this month. But I suppose I will not steal too much time, so I will give the floor to first presenter, Mr. Senior Research Scientist, Dr. Rainer Peltola. Do you want to get your presentation yourself? Tuossa on tuo ja tuo pitäisi kuulua vielä paremmin.
Okay, hello everyone. People here and people over there in Finland. So I'm now sharing the view.
Now you're sharing the.
Yeah, this is always the problem.
So stop sharing and
yeah.
So you and then share again. And then you choose
this one.
Yes.
Now the same problem. Pieni hetki tässä menee taas vähän aikaa, että saadaan.
Nyt näkyy oikein. Näkyy esitys.
Näkyy koko esitys. Loistavaa. Okay, they can see the correct mode now. So some summary about the field pilots and berry mapping we have been doing during the project, and so this is mostly about berry yields, because the berries this is pretty much the same as I presented in Kilpisjärvi last autumn, but of course the people in Finland haven't seen it, so I go through it again, and Björn hasn't probably seen it. So we have been concentrating on berries because I think they are the biggest. They have the biggest commercial potential of concrete products of agroforestry concepts here in northern area. There are existing markets for wild berries, there are existing logistics, and there seems to be demand which actually constantly exceed the supply. So the two questions are how to increase the yields and how to find the existing good yields of the berries. And we have been doing just a moment, I adjust the projector a bit. So we have been doing these bilberry vegetation manipulations. Idea has been that by cutting and burning and so on, we could get more flowers and more berries. And what we have been doing is that we have been cut the above ground biomass. 15% of the above ground biomass have been cut. That's one treatment. And one treatment is that we have removed everything, cut 100% of the above ground biomass. Then we have burned the above ground biomass, and then we have made a strip cutting, which means that we have removed half of the vegetation so that there are like clear-cut strips between the full vegetation. You can see the picture on the left side lower corner. And the idea is to see whether this burning or cutting, whether they produce more new shoots and more new flowers. And the strip cutting idea is that we open the vegetation for the pollinators, so that the pollinators can get access to all the vegetation. If you observe, for example, bumblebee for a while, you can see that if it can't fly into the flower, it ignores it. She is not using her legs to get to go between the flowers. So if the flower is inside the vegetation, it won't get pollinated. And these treatments were performed on 2019 and on summer 2021. The control squares, now we are talking about 1 square meter experiment squares. The number of berries in control squares which received no treatment at all was 21. And there were no berries in the plots which were burned. There was new vegetation, but the destruction was so harsh that they haven't had time to produce new berries. And also you can see that we don't see any beneficial benefits on about when we do these cuttings. When we have cut 100% of the above ground vegetation, there were only 2 berries. And when we have done 15% cutting, there were 16 berries. So obviously the berry production has not been recovered within 2 years after these treatments. But what's interesting is the strip cutting. In the control squares in 2021, there were 104 flowers in 1 square meter. And in the strip cutting squares, there were 109. So even if we have removed half of the above ground vegetation, there was still equal amount of flowers. Maybe they benefit, the plant benefits because it has more space around it. So maybe it produces more flowers so that the number of flowers was the same. And what was very interesting was that the pollination success means that the share of the flowers which end up to be raw berries, the pollination success was in the strip cutting treatments 56%. It means that 56% of the flowers ended up to be raw berries. And in the control areas, in the control squares, the pollination success was 25%. So there might be some base on the idea that it improves the pollination, but unfortunately the p-value was 0.36. So the difference is not statistically significant.
I think one of the reasons why you have the same number of flowers is that because it's clonal, so it has one individual is quite largely spread out.
Several square
And
meters.
then if you cut shots, it have more resources for the flowers on the shots that are left.
Yes.
Than because you have removed quite many shots.
Because 80% of bilberry biomass is underground. So basically, it actually has the same resources in both squares, in the treaty squares and control squares. So it's investing the same resources, but
to do more narrow.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. So of course there was practically no difference between the ripening success between the strip cut areas and control areas. So as a conclusion about these field pilots, I would say that there might be some chances for strip cutting. we definitely once again should do this again with much higher number of squares. This is what seems to happen always.
Actually, also you could do the strip cutting, the tree lab, because that's what they are doing in Canada, in the northeast. So they have, but that's a larger area then. So they have like 20 meters of berries, no trees, berries, and then you get a quite good condition for pollination.
Yes, that's right. We are doing it. There is a forest management method. It's called small area clear cutting. So there are clear cutting pienaukohakkuut. So there are clear cuttings, but the area of the clear cutting is very small. I think
Maximum 0.3.
yeah, 0.3 hectares. So the area is like 300 square meters clear cutting area. So we can talk about it, whether it's actually clear cutting or not. But anyway, the idea is a bit the same. Although it's not, they are not stripes, they are like areas. So it would be interesting to see what the berry production looks like in this small scale clear cutting areas. And we have been planning such research, but not resources yet. But anyway, the other berry, what about the other berries? I wouldn't go for lingonberries because there are existing cultivation methods and seedling production for lingonberries and also for cloudberries, but the cultivation is not commercially viable. And then there is, of course, the Russian expertise about cranberries, which their method seems to be quite effective. But I think that such a cultivation or half cultivation is not possible in Nordic countries.
No, it would not be possible because you're on the peatland and you get a lot of CO2.
Yeah, you won't get
No.
permission to do that. But then about this mapping. So how to find the potential harvesting areas. And now when we are talking about these potential harvesting areas, we are talking about good vegetation coverage. We know pretty well what kind of forest, in what kind of forest there are good bilberry coverage. There are models for that. And since we have quite good forest inventory data, we know where these types of forests are. So in practice, bilberry coverage map may look like this. And there are dark blue areas, it means that there is a good potential for good bilberry vegetation coverage. And then in the lighter blue areas, there is a bit less potential. And when the area is white, then there is no potential for good bilberry coverage. So doing these models and these maps is quite straightforward, but of course they have to be verified. We have to know, do they really tell the right things? So we have to know how well does the map predict the places with pickable yields, and how well does the map predict places with non-pickable yields. So the map has to tell where you should go in order to get good bilberry harvest, and then it should tell you where you should not go. And of course, there are no other methods to check or verify the models and the maps. There are no other methods than just go to the forest and see with your eyes what is the situation. Maybe we can send drones in future, but so far we have to go there. But fortunately, we have these students of Lapland University of Applied Sciences who are very good at this kind of field work. So we had 44 bilberry stands, which according to the map or model should be pickable, meaning that the average yield is more than 20 kilos per hectare. And when the students went to the site, they observed and used the scale from 1 to 3. Would I pick berries here? And if it's not pickable, why? Short explanation, maybe the forest is too dense, or the trees are too young, or the soil looks too fertile or infertile, or there has been recent regeneration, felling, clear cutting. And the results were that out of 44 stands, which should have been good picking areas according to the map, 34 were actually pickable. And 10 or 23% were not good areas. And quite often the situation was that there has been a recent final felling, clear cutting, because the forest inventory data is not totally up to date. And of course, because the bilberry yields, as we saw previously, the bilberry yields are getting better when the forest is getting older, then of course it's a bit delicate situation, because when the bilberry yields or the bilberry coverage should be the best, it is also time for the clear cutting.
But I'm not sure if they can hear me, but I'm thinking about the weather conditions, because that's maybe one of the factors that influence.
Yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, that's the different story than the weather conditions.
Those 44 stands, are they in the same like climatic area?
Yes, they are. They are because they are within 1 hour driving distance from Rovaniemi.
Yeah.
So they are practically in the same
Yeah.
climate, inside the same climatic conditions.
Did you use reference areas?
What do you mean by reference
I mean that some spots where might not be
not pickable
or not.
Yes, we did, but not in this summer. We did it on the second summer. These results were from 2020, and now these results are from 2021. So we had actually 100 bilberry stands, which half of them should have been pickable and half of them should not have been pickable. And when the students verified the pickable areas, we got pretty much the same result as previous year, about 80% accuracy. But when they went to these non-pickable areas, about 90% of those areas were really non-pickable. So it works. The map works pretty well on both sides of this pickability.
Okay.
So I'm actually quite happy with the end result. Now we start to negotiate with the Finnish Forest Administration that we would select some wider areas with them, and then we will publish the maps and maybe get feedback from general audience. How well do the map work? That would be the second stage. Okay, but then the frost experiments. The idea here was to determine, because the flowering period and pollination and so on, that's the most sensitive phase of the yield formation. And of course the sub-zero temperatures are not good for lingonberry or bilberry. And for example, typical answer for the reporter who phones to me during June and asks what is the bilberry yield going to be, typical answer is it depends so much on weather conditions during the flowering. You probably have the same
Yes.
answer. So what we did was that we constructed 3 devices, which were practically freezers turned upside down, and then there was temperature measurement so that we can treat the flowering bilberry or lingonberry so that the temperature is quite strictly determined, and the duration of this frost treatment is also pretty closely determined. They were 1 square meter boxes, and we put those boxes over the vegetation during the flowering time, and this is what it looks like after the treatment. And lingonberry experiments were done on 2020, and it looks like that the temperatures, we use temperatures 0 degrees, -3 degrees, and -5 degrees. And the duration of the treatment was 0 hours, so they are the controls, 1 hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, and 10 hours. So it looks like that lingonberry can tolerate quite okay. The percentages here are the pollination successes. So we calculated the flowers before the treatment, and then we calculated the raw berries from the squares a couple of weeks after the treatment. And this is once again the pollination success, the percentage of the flowers which ended up to be, no, not the raw berries, but ripe berries. Yeah, so this is the fruit set. And in the control squares, 38% of the flowers ended up to be ripe berries. And this is lingonberry. And it looks like that lingonberry can tolerate even -5 degrees, but only for 1 hour. And this seems to apply also to other temperatures. So 1 hour, 0 or sub-zero temperatures for lingonberry, it can tolerate it, but not lower temperatures and not longer periods. But what was interesting was that, so this is the number of ripe berries. What was interesting was that in these lingonberries here on the left side, they are from the control plots. And even if the frost damaged lingonberries produced the berries, the quality of berries was clearly poorer. So the effect of low temperature is not just about pollination success. It seems to affect the ripening process as well.
It could be because the seeds have a role in the development of the fruit. So if you have bad pollination, or that you don't get that many seeds, in quite many other fruits, you will get smaller and deformed fruits.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this was observation which was done by the student, and we didn't give her any instructions how to quantify the damage. So we don't know the limit, temperature limit for these damages. And these are the bilberry results from last summer. And we can see here that bilberry tolerates lower temperatures longer time than lingonberry, which makes sense because bilberry flowers earlier than lingonberry, and it has, of course, adjusted itself so that it can tolerate lower temperatures. We see really nice decrease in the fruit set when we go longer treatments and lower temperatures, except this 1 hour treatment. There are always the outliers,
Yes.
annoying outliers, and the reason for this was that this 1 hour treatment was done during daytime when it was actually quite hot, and the students had big problems to keep the temperature in the limits because it was so hot. So I'm not sure whether the treatment time was actually 1 hour and whether the temperature was really 0 or -3 or -5 degrees. Rest of the treatments were done actually during the night time. But you can see that bilberry can tolerate quite well -3 and even -5 degrees up to 3 hours. But when it's -3 and 5 hours and 10 hours, then we can start to see the damages. So when the reporters ask how much does the bilberry tolerate frost, we can say that 2 to 3 hours, -3, maybe even -5 degrees, but no more.
As we have in this kind of project, we have also always a limited resources. So in the beginning, we were discussing about the possibility that we do also these experiments in, for example, in southern Finland, because there might be difference between the bilberry which is growing in northern Finland and the bilberries which are growing in southern Finland, because the environmental conditions are different. Is this, Rainer, still something we can think about if we have a, let's say, proper project where we can go on with?
Yes, that would be interesting. Yes.
But it's two different things to look on the flower damage during frost than to look on the plant itself, how much it tolerates. Because I guess that you would maybe see differences in the toleration on the plant level from north to south, but probably not lower damage. But this is just a
Good
guess.
question. We could see also damages to the plant itself, blackening of the leaves and so on, of course.
And we can broaden it, as you saw. This was very interesting results that you can even see it from the berries that there has something happened. I don't know if they checked out the bilberries, if there was differences.
Yeah. But anyway, these two experiments, lingonberry and bilberry. Lingonberry has been reported because it was the thesis of the student. And this bilberry thing, these bilberry experiments is also a thesis. So they will be published. But why we did this, of course, we are happy with Inger to tell some details to reporters. But we can use this data also when we want to map the damages, because Finland and also, of course, in Norway also, we have the grid weather data. So we can pinpoint the locations and see from the weather databases what has the weather conditions been in that area. And when we know that, for example, bilberry can tolerate up to down to -5 degrees, but no more than 3 hours, and if we use that data with the grid weather data, then we can pinpoint on the map that these are areas with most probable frost damage areas. So maybe you should this year find some other place to pick bilberries or lingonberries.
Are you going to continue these experiments with these the frost tests?
If we get financing, yes, because we already have the machinery which seems to work. Because of course we can do the same kind of follow-up in natural conditions, but then we should somehow predict that this is the area where there are going to be natural frost damages, and that's not possible. Or we could take the plants out from the soil and put them to phytodrawn, but that's not the natural situation either.
Have you got any reference researches? Somebody have been testing the same things?
With lingonberry and bilberry, no, but with high bush and low bush blueberry, yes.
And what do they look like?
Quite. I don't know the high bush blueberry, but low bush blueberry, pretty similar. Yes.
The high bush is more in the south of like US or so probably not any
No interest
interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't remember with lingonberry, but with bilberry, it's it can self-pollinate. So because I guess that it will, the first thing that will be damaged in the flower is the pollen bladder. So because that's so tiny and fragile, so it will affect the pollination itself. So, but if you are able to self-pollinate, and it might not be that big damage.
Yes, the self-pollination is possible also for lingonberry, but as compared to cross-pollination, insect pollination, the share of self-pollination is really minor.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did you stop the sharing? Yes.
So hello to the audience on Teams and also in the room. So my name is Inger Martinussen, and I'm working in Nibio in Norway, and I'm mainly working with wild berries in this project. And a colleague of me, Bjørn Egil Flø, he will present later on the socioeconomic studies done in the same areas that we are doing pilot studies. So the title says that I'm going to talk about future prospects of agroforestry. I mainly will focus on the wild berries and also on the availability of the raw material. But of course, there are a lot of other obstacles to earn money on these resources, and that's also a topic for my colleague Bjørn Egil just after me. So we have been discussing in this project quite a lot what we mean about agroforestry and how we defined it into a northern context. So this is what me and my colleagues are thinking that in a northern perspective, both grazing and reindeer husbandry, gathering, of course, of the berries and herbs, hunting, fishing, and recreation are part of this definition. The background of quite much of the work I've been doing on wild berries is that it's a high demand for this raw material, and it's a lot of different companies that need wild berry in different products as yogurt and juices and jams, cosmetics, so on. And also it's wish to have raw material from Norway. by the Norwegian producers, but it's not available. So we have a lot of trends. It's local food and traditions. People want to know the origin of the food and the quality. Sustainability says that the local products are better than imported blueberry from Chile, for instance. And then you have all these trends on healthy eating, nutrition, weight loss, fitness. Which is a trend, I guess, that everyone wants to improve themselves. So it's this Nordic health and well-being business. It's growing, and of course, then it's a need for these wild berries and herbs. So in Norway, 95% is wilderness, and as much as 38% of the land area is covered by woods, meaning that we do have a lot of wild berry resources, but only about 4% of the total volume are picked. And as I said, it's almost non-existent to have Norwegian wildberry on the market, no matter if the industry want it or not. So it's a big year-to-year variation, and that's something that they worry about, because they would like to have big volumes and steady volumes. You will have big differences in volume of wild berries from year to year, and one year it will be on this place and another year it will be on another place. So as I've written down here, what is wanted to have a profitable business out of this is a steady supply, predictable volumes, and of course high quality. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the pilot studies that we have been doing in this project Agroforestry or Agrofore, and also a project that's called Wildberries that is financed by the Norwegian Research Council. So here we are using the same plots in the area of Dividal for both lingonberry and bilberry, because in this Wildberry project we are focusing on lingonberry, and in Agrofore project it's bilberry. So what we have been doing in Dividal is that we have area that we have been given from Statskog, which is the owner of the forest area in Dividal, which is a very long valley area. So here is, if you take a look to the right, it's the Norwegian map, and in the Wildberry project we have these plots on many different locations in Norway, so from the south to the north, but in Agrofore project we are using only the plots in inner part of Troms in Målselv. So there is where we are recording or phenotyping both bilberry and lingonberry. So the areas we have designed in that way that we have 250 square meter area, and then we have this, so it's a circle of 250 square meter, and within each of these circles we have 5 1 square meter plots. And in Dividal area then we have about 50 plots, and these areas we have tried to have variation within the plots. So we have, for instance, one clear-cut areas, and then we have some variation in the forest type. It seemed to be very hard to have like southern slope and northern slope and so on as we wanted, because it's a valley area. So what we have been doing for now 3 years, we have recorded the number of flowers and number of berries. We do have climatic data, and for this Wildberry project, we also have been doing sampling of berries to do chemical analysis, because we would like to study the effect of climate on the quality of the berries. We are also mapping and classifying the forest, and all these are supposed to be put in a model, and we are doing this in collaboration with our Finnish partners in Luke, which are responsible for the modeling together with forest researchers in Nibio. So in Norway, we do have forest maps that are called SR16. And this is public available on Nibio pages on this hilden.no.nibio.no. And this is a quite rough map in a way, because the pixels are 16 times 16 meter. But this forest maps give information about timber volume, biomass, mean tree height, bonitet, dominating tree species, and so on. And these characteristics in green is characters that I find especially important is leaf area index, the canopy cover, because the light available for the wild berries are very important for the volume, and vegetation type and age. So we already have all this information on the areas where we have our plots, and these are going to be put together with the data that we are recording in models. And in that respect, we will get some idea about the limiting factors for a good crop. Yeah, so this is actually something I already mentioned. So here it says 25 plots, but that was the first year. So yes, last year we increased the number of plots for registration of flowers and berries in the plots in Dividon. So this is a lot of data to go through, and we will also model it together with the lingonberry data. So I don't have detailed results yet, but yeah, it's about it varies a bit the days from flowering to mature berry, but in 2020 it was 55 days. And the average number of flowers were 56 per square meter. And then it was in that year a very good pollination percent of 62. Berries are quite small. So they look so similar so that I got confused. So this was the 21 a slightly better summer with just 51 days from flowering to mature berry. And but the pollination was reduced to 42%. So what I have done in addition to this is I just wanted to check whether pH could give any difference between the different plots, just to be sure that there are no difference in the soil parameters that could explain the differences. So you can see that the pH are varying from almost as low as 2.5 up to 4.4, but it's not nothing in the pH that can explain the variation. So then a bit about this processing and innovation, and in the Agroforestry project we have had a bit of collaboration with liquor producer that are in Lyngen area in Troms, which is called Aurora Spirit, and they are producing different gins, but also now they have whiskey production. They have some herb liquor, and also they have vodka, and they would like to have maps of the different forest resources in Lyngen area, so they know where they can find the different herbs and so on, because they have a policy that they should only use berries and herbs from Lyngen as much as they can. Of course, I guess that they sometimes have to use other resources. So yeah, I think yeah, we had this discussion earlier in the group that's present here, that how should you really earn money on these forest resources? And of course, it's a matter to get as high cost product as possible out of it. And then it could be, you know, as additives into gin or high cost products, like cosmetics and so on. So we have a collaboration with Nofima Research Institute in this Wildberry project, where we are trying to look into new ways of processing different berries, and in that project especially lingonberry, because yeah, jam is popular of course, but it's maybe not the most healthy product anymore, because it's quite much sugar in it. So it's yeah, we had a meeting with it was a chef that were trying to, you know, it was crisps with lingonberry flavor, it was foam of lingonberry, it was ketchup of lingonberry. So it's possible to think about more broader kind of products than the more traditional jam and juices. So, but I think maybe Bjørn Egil is going to talk a bit more about how to earn money or the obstacles, because the owner structure and traditional use and so on and is a part of this discussion. And this is a picture where we see some of the field areas of the plots, but this is winter time. So thank you very much. So it's no questions from the audience.
The year 2020, could you show the results?
Yes. 2020.
So the berry weight was quite low.
Yes.
Was it a dry summer?
Yes, it was. It was actually a very warm summer.
And dry.
Yeah.
Well, that probably explains.
Yeah.
Yes. But you said pollination was 62%, and you said it was quite good. Based on what?
Based on experience, I would say, because it's but maybe it's not good compared to what you had.
Yeah, I was just I don't remember what is the average pollination success of Bilberry in Finland, but it is more than 62%. So is it so that in Norway the conditions for pollinators are they harsher or are they more variable?
I think in our plots it was very variable, and of course we have more windy conditions.
Yeah, that's what I probably, when you will gather more data.
Yes.
You will probably see much more variation than in Finland.
Yes.
In the country level.
Yeah, and that's what I always say to journalists when they phone and ask me whether it's going to be a good crop or not. And then I said, for everyone that would like to find berries, there are a place for you this year also, because it's just a matter of moving to the right place. So if you have had like very windy and wet conditions at the coast during flowering and pollination, you are quite certain that it would be better to drive to the inland and pick berries there that year. So yeah, but this is just very rough calculations. So you will get much more information when you take the climatic data and look exactly at the time span during flowering for these different plots, and we have not yet done that.
Haveri Heikkilä is present here, but he is busy with cooking, yes. So he has sent us the presentation. And I think I will go through it together with Rainer Peltola, who knows better some parts of that one. Okay, thank you. So my name is Petri Muye. So I'm a senior specialist, but I'm more like an administrator in this project. But I have got good slides from Juha Haveri Heikkilä, and in fact, Mr. Rainer Peltola is here next to me. So we will go through these experiments we have done with especially with chaka, and then we have some reports on the resin experiments we have had. Okay, so I suppose first of all, maybe Rainer can say some words about the chaka, because there is some persons in the audience that probably don't know so well what kind of mushroom this is.
Okay, so it's a wood-rotting fungi, Inonotus obliquus, and previously it has been thought that it's quite a severe pest or disease in the forest. So previously the forest management instruction was that all the trees in which you can see the chaga clumps should be removed and burned immediately, because it spreads quite fastly. But the chaga conch, which forms on the trunk, that's not the fruiting body. Actually, sometimes you can see that people claim that it is fruiting body, but that's not true. The chaga conch, it's a quite valuable raw material, especially in Asian countries. I think that it has beneficial health effects, and we certainly know that it has very strong antioxidant properties. And we also know that in cell models, it's quite effective against inflammations. So it's definitely have biological effects. But anyway, so far the chaga has been collected from natural sources, but it is of course quite easy to inoculate. So the hyphae of chaga is grown on microbiological media, and then some wooden plugs are inoculated with the hyphae, and then the birches are there are the forest owner, he drills a small hole to the trunk of the birch, and then he puts the inoculated wooden plug there, and the tree is after that quite effectively infected. Whether it produces this chaga conch is another story, but maybe we go later to that.
Okay, so we did in 2019 and 2021, we had some experiment plots in 10 different forest owners places and 2 places in state forests. And they were located in Lapland region, and some of them at the northern Ostrobothnia, south from Lapland. And in every experiment area, we cultivated 40 birch trees and used 3 inoculated plugs for each tree. And then we have made the inventory now, and we invented the cultivated chaga experimental areas, which have been done in 2019. We had 2 experiment areas with 5 different populations in the same habitat. So we have different kind of chaga. You can at the moment buy also from Finland this kind of commercial chaga, which can be inoculated to the trees. We made the inventory so that we check the chaga mushrooms for different populations, what kind of infections we have seen. We checked if there is dark fluid drained from the inoculated sites, if there's bulkings or visible conchs. It is surprisingly fast how we have seen the small conchs or bulkings, because in earlier we got the information that it might take 5-6 years to see some let's say clear things. So it has been faster than we thought in this kind of northern located experimental areas. So there is some pictures. There is this visible conchs, bulking, and steam bleeding, which show that there is something happening inside the tree. Okay. We have also done some experiments where we have cut the trees, and we are now checking out what kind of things is happening inside the trees. Maybe Rainer can tell us some preliminary results of that.
Is Annina Hietanen with us now? No, okay, because this is her thesis. I just thought that she would be the best person to describe it. But anyway, what she and Aki did was that they cut several trees which had visible conchs and bulging and stem bleeding, and also trunks which were inoculated, but there were no signs of infection. And then she and Aki, they cut the piece of the trunk into several discs, and then they measured the area of the infection on the surface of the disc. And when we know the height of the trunk, then we can calculate the volume of the infection inside the trunk. And of course, when we see visible conchs and when we see bulging and when we see stem bleeding, of course there was inside the trunk. There was infection inside the trunk. What is interesting was that there were also several trunks without any visible signs of infection, and we could see equal volumes of infections inside the trunk. So it would be really nice to know what actually triggers the formation of the chaga conch. It seems to be so that it is not related to the severity of the infection itself.
So has anyone done genetic study on the different? Do you have a big variation in genetic?
There are several strains of chaga or Inonotus obliquus, and it seems to be. I don't know whether there has been any sequencing done, but we do know that there are differences between the strains, how fast and how effectively they infect the tree, but that's of course not surprising.
And you have been using just one strain and same strain?
There were several strains.
I think five strains. Yes. Okay, then we have done some experiments with some other let's say mushrooms. Resin mushroom cultivated in June 2020. We have not seen any visible resin yet at the experimental areas. This is also mushrooms which might have some medical which can be used for this kind of medical things, but I don't know, Rainer, do you know this resin? It is also used maybe in Asia.
It's a medical mushroom.
Yeah.
They have in Asia. They have strong traditions on medical use of mushrooms. It's a bit different culture than our mushroom culture.
Then we have done some experiments in 2021 at Hirvas with this Hericium coralloides. This is kind of mushroom which can be used for cooking directly, I think so. Yeah. So basically the results have been good this far. We have seen the conchs and bulkings within 2 years, and also those results which were introduced by Rainer Peltola
that in fact we don't know how and when the conchs will become visible, because it seems that it's not directly connected to the severeness of the infection inside the tree. So in fact we will in future search for the money to continue this one, because in fact we would like to follow what is happening at these pilot areas for next 5-10 years.
Good thing is that the trees won't go anywhere.
Yeah, trees will be there. Yeah, and there has been a clear difference between these 5 different fungal strains. So we will check it out also. And also there has been clear differences in 2 experimental areas. Of course, the environmental things are affecting also the mushrooms. So this is also under research, that can we get something out of this data.
So do you have this in Finland, that you are losing more and more of the old forest? Because it's in the old forest and the older trees that you might have more of the fungi and so on.
I would say that, of course, the trend has been that the area of old forest has been decreasing, but I think it has more or less stopped now, because practically all the real old forests are now pretty much protected.
Yeah, yes, they are protected that, and it also depends so much how much birches there are in old forest, because birches are shorter lifetime than compared to hardwood.
And in Finland, let's say also so that as we are working in northern Finland, so we have a lot of protected forests, much more in north, because it's mainly state forest owned areas. I suppose in southern Finland there is less and smaller protected area, because the forest is owned by the, let's say, private owners.
But you're right that it is possible to find the more chaka from certain kind of forests which are old, yes, older than usual average age, but also in the places which are located in certain kind of places where there are enough birches.
And then the local conditions affect quite much. If, for example, there are some open area, then the birches which are close to the border of the open area typically are infected more easily, because the snow rips the branches off, and then it gives open access for the fungal infection. And also that's the reason why chaga is more prevalent in northern Finland, because of the frost damages, the trunk splits due to the temperature changes and so on.
And I suppose let's say the industrial and commercial use of birch. So in northern Finland, it's not there is not so much birch forest which can be used for the, let's say, value-added products as such. They are mainly used for burning and this kind of stuff. And there is also birches which are growing in the areas where they are not forming that valuable forest as such.
The birch is also used for pulp production, but it's often not so productive as
Okay, then
we have done some collecting of resin, and again we have one student who is not present, or is Mikko present? Of course, no. So we have done some experiments with the collecting resin passively. At the moment, the collection of resin is quite small scale in Finland, but in fact, the resin is used for some medical products, even so that it's in certain circumstances, it's used even at the hospitals in some.
Yes, there is one company in Finland, Repolar company, and well, the product itself is very simple. It's just resin mixed with the basic skin salve, but it's pretty effective in treating like pressure wounds in hospitals, and they have managed to get an kind of a formal acceptance from the medical what's the word? The medical organization which gives permissions for medicines. So it's kind of an approved product also for hospital use, and they are using their product in hospitals. But then there are of course several other companies which make pretty much the same product, but they don't have the official approval for the product. So it's just sold in health shops and so on.
So in Finland we have quite wide everyone's rights, so which means that we can collect, let's say, ordinary mushrooms and berries freely from the forest. We don't need to know whose forest it is, but the chaka and also the resin is kind of products that you need the permission from the forest owner if you are collecting them. So we have collected data, and we have certain areas where we have collected data about the passive resin, and research was done by collecting resin from these trees which were earlier marked. And total we collected resin from 32 trees, and 10 different trees were damaged for the research. This resin was handled so that we found out that the impurities in collected resin was about 13%, and we also counted that the revenue per hour was about 14.5 euros, as the average price of resin used in calculations was 40 euros per kilo. We have to say that this resin is now collected and bought for the medical purposes, but there is no clear, let's say, way how you can sell the resin at the moment. Okay, and there we have some information about the experiments we have done when we have done these cut to the trees. We found out that the damage to the trees needs to be at least 1 millimeter deep in the wood to form resin. But the damages should not be deeper than 3 millimeters to get the best results. And there is also the length of damage. We have used from 12 to about 30 centimeters long damages. So it seems that the collection of resin is profitable practice if it has been done correctly. Of course, you have to know the area, and you have to have a knowledge how to identify the resinous trees.
So I guess that this is something you can't do if you don't own the forest.
Yes, or you have to have a permission from the owner of the forest. Yes, definitely so.
This is something that if you want to do it, it's better to do it a couple of years before the clear cutting.
Yeah.
Because of course harming the trunk means that there is always possible all kind of forest pathogens and diseases and so on.
And if we think the background of this idea is that this kind of activities have been done in history in Finland, and also if we go to the Russian Karelia. So the resin has been used for medical purposes and also for some petrochemical products earlier. But this kind of traditional use of resin has almost disappeared in Finland. I think Rainer can say some words, because earlier when this kind of activities were started, so you visited also Russia and you even brought some tools which have used for this one.
Yeah, it was really big thing in Russia or in Soviet Union. But the resin they collected, it was from pines, and it went to chemical industry. But it was not a raw material for medicines. Well, maybe they did also medicine, but mainly it went to chemical industry because their forest processing or timber processing industry didn't produce tall oil. Tall oil is pretty important side product of the pulp industry here in Finland and in Norway also.
Yes.
About the results of this research, well, there are lots of detailed information background here, and we couldn't see the figures and diagrams so well. But however, the main conclusions are that, for example, concerning the salary, it's no use to collect too precisely the resin from the trunk if you want to get better salary. And it's no use to make the scarves for the stems if you want to get better salary. It's more valuable to just to use the existing wounds in stems and gather the resin, passive resin. And also, as if you make the wounds to the stems, they should be deep enough so that the scarf wound will go deep enough to the wooden part of the stem. And well, there are many details which have been gathered in this research, and it's quite interesting. And we or the researcher has not found any kind of reference information for this. But we will see that how these experimental plots will produce passive resin afterwards. So we are also going to follow and the results afterwards, even if this project will end.
Okay, thank you. So even though we have been now discussing about the, let's say, biological and technical possibilities in using these natural ingredients. So in fact, one of the most important issues is the socioeconomic aspect of this utilization, and research scientist Björn Egil Flö from Nibio will go a little bit deeper to this part of the project. So Björn.
Thank you. Do you mind if I stand up instead of
No.
sitting here? I'm so.
But it's the microphone.
Yeah, but I know this is the microphone, but I bring it over here, and I hope that you can hear me. Yeah, you can. So, socioeconomic aspect. Yeah, that's my task here to try to answer or say something about. I think it's not exactly as Inger said. It's not a business model I'm going to talk about. I'm more talking about the sociological and perspective on how to make things or an economy or a kind of a social sustainable system of how we can utilize these resources. I'm going to talk about it from a Norwegian perspective and a case study perspective that I have. So it's pretty much related to the context of northern Norway that's going on at the moment. So we see if I can make this work. Where is the? Yeah. But first of all, what do we mean by socioeconomic aspect of agroforestry? The term socioeconomy refers to how economic activities affects and is shaped by social processes. To put it short, we can say this is a study of the relation between economy and the social, the economic life and the social life. In a project studying utilization of non-wood forest products in the Arctic, it is, at least for me, natural to put it in the context of local rural development. So it is to design a study or a system, I mean, for use of non-wood forest products that can be economically as well as social sustainable over time. Then we need to consider both the material and the symbolic value of the resources as well as the end product produce of the resources. We also need to consider people, or particularly local people's understanding of rights as well as duties related to utilize these resources. So I want to remind you that our study area are related to this in first and foremost the what we call the outfield municipalities. So it is the forest and mountainous part of inland northern Norway. Typically, this is very sparsely populated rural areas, and large part of the forest as well as the mountains area, they are owned and managed by the state-owned enterprise Statskog. And different from the state-owned land in southern Norway, this land is not organized as commons. Just it is just what we can say land owned by the state. First through the king, and later through the agricultural department. But in 1992, the former Directorate for the State Forest made these enterprise into a kind of like a state-owned enterprise, and it's run in the same way as a private enterprise. There is a long history behind this, behind how this emerged in northern Norway, and the history involved war death back from the 1600s, and a large wave of privatization, and later buyback to the state. But I won't go into that now. But an interesting thing still is that from the state perspective, it was important to settle the land here, to claim the national ownership and agree upon borders toward Finland and Sweden. Therefore, the state supported people to settle in the area and cultivate the land. And in many ways, we can say this was a bit of a kind of a last frontier, and we will still find elements of a sort of a settler culture in this area. Compared to the rest of the country, the money economy came late to the farmers in these areas. Bad infrastructure and long distances made this area to an area where subsistence economy is still very much alive in people's culture. Berry picking, small game trapping and hunting is an important part of people's identity. Same as gathering firewood, as well as cutting his own timber for buildings and maintaining the farm buildings. The point is that even if it is not sort of a common, it is still a lot of what we can say different user rights that the local has in the forest and the outfield. What can we say? We can say that there are two different premises or for the different user rights that we can find in the area today. The first is the legal premises. To explain that, we have to go far back. We have to go back to the German branch of the Roman law on property. In contrast to the Anglo-Saxon branch, who has a more absolute understanding of property, typically a pure geographic understanding, where a man owns everything inside an enclosure. The German property tradition are not just geographically divided, but it also divided or cloven according to different types of resources. This means that a man can have right to graze, pick berries, fish, or collect firewood and other on other man's property. The reason why this property tradition have survived so long in Norway have been debated a lot, but the law professor Robertstad, he points out that what we can call a kind of a second premises for the user right, and that is the political premises. The living condition in this small remote communities, the long distances and also the harsh climate made it necessary to supplement what you could produce on a small farm with the resources that you could gather in the outfields. So in short, it was also a kind of a welfare issue to give local people access to resources in the outfield. But all this was in the old days. Today, we can say that we have gone from welfare to identity. There is hardly anyone who honestly can say that they need the food they can gather in the outfield to avoid starvation. But still, they need it to build their collective identity. I've been in this rural study field for about 25 years now, and for me, it is easy to see how much stronger the culture of utilizing the wild resources in the forest and mountains are in northern Norway than it is in the southern Norway. In many communities, you can still find sophisticated informal rules on how the inhabitants distribute the resources between themselves. Typically, when it comes to cloudberry, you can certain places you can say kind of belongs to a certain family, or other families do respect this and goes to their own place to pick their berries. So when I ask them how this different sites was distributed in the first place, I often find it related to where the different farmers used to have their sheep hefted. This tells me that berry picking was something people did in combination with other work in the outfield. So when they went out to look after the sheep, they combined that with picking berry. But in most of the communities, even in northern Norway, this is not how things work anymore. Rural communities are not agrarian communities anymore. Less than 7% of the rural residents in Norway are actively involved in farming, and even less graze in the outfield. I mean, in Dividalen and in Reisa, where I've done my study, it's like less than 15% are involved in agriculture of the inhabitants in that municipalities. So the old system are changing, and when system change, institutions has to change with it. But of course, this creates also some tensions. And for a few years ago, this was something you could see if you were hiking in the mountains of northern Norway. Landowners and local people were trying to forbid others to pick cloudberry. A few years back, there was an intense debate in the media about local people who wanted to exclude others from picking cloudberry. There is an understanding of cloudberry not to be included in the all man's right in the northern Norway. And according to the Act of the Outdoor Recreation, it isn't either, but it is just on certain conditions. Because only if the amount of berry in a certain area have been significant over time, and that the resources have represented a relatively large part of the landowner's income, then you can forbid others to pick. Unless you can't. So, but still, this is just a law. My understanding of this debate was that it was not just a question about the cloudberry, but it was more in the context of the commodification of the outfields. The last, let's say, 15 to 20 years, tourism has been the fastest growing industry in northern Norway. The numbers of tourists have started to stress local people more and more, even if most people admit the importance of tourism on the local economy. The flip side of the coin are starting to become more and more visible for the local people. Because there is an important difference between this new economy which modern tourism represent, and also the traditional rural economy like farming and forestry. And the difference is that when the traditional economy produced goods to be exported out of the community and consumed there in the cities, the new economy are importing the tourist to consume the rural in the community. So if I should land this somehow, I will ask, what do we need to keep in mind if we want agroforestry to be a tool for rural development? I think first we have to ensure that it is embedded in local resources as well as in history, skills, culture, and knowledge. And second, we need to secure local ownership, both to the resources as well as to the means of production and the value created by this production. And third, we need local engagement. We need to stimulate and facilitate potential entrepreneurs, both economically as well as through counseling and training and other services. And finally, we need what we can say good old-fashioned endogenous approaches. If we manage that, we can create a ecological, socioeconomic, and cultural sustainable development in the forest communities in northern Norway. That was my presentation.
Could you present the slide with the sign? So, if there are such a sign in Norway, in northern Norway, is it respected in practice?
I think it is. It might be. It depends on. I mean, as I said, there is a common understanding that people in northern Norway have exclusive rights to pick cloudberry, particularly cloudberry. So so people kind of respect it, but other doesn't. So yeah, Inge.
I think about some places you just know that this is the person that will be very aggressive if you actually enter the area. So it's actually stories about people that are threatened with, shotgun.
Yeah.
So you need to have some kind of certain local knowledge to reflect if this is a real threat or if you doesn't really.
I suppose you can be there, but you better be there without cloudberries in your hand.
But I think, but probably Björn Egger knows it's better. But I think it is that if you cannot show on your income, on your tax list that this is actually an income, then you actually can say this. But if you cannot say that you have an income, you're not allowed to do this.
So is it so that in Norway, if you are picking up the cloudberries and selling it, you have to pay tax for that?
If you are selling it, yes, you have to pay.
Okay.
You have to pay tax.
Yeah, it's tax-free income for the picker.
Yeah, and this is the only, if you can say that this is my income and I do pay tax from it, then you are actually in right to maybe have this sign. But if you don't, you can't.
But the most interesting part here is that why do the Act on Outdoor Recreation include this paragraph telling that you are allowed to forbid other to pick berries in your spots. Why did they do that in the first place? And the case here is that this didn't come from nowhere. This come from the knowledge that for local people, this is an important resource. So the question here is more about on the state-owned property. If you can show that you have used to pick berries here for your farm, in generations, can you then go to the state and the Statsskog or the state enterprise and say that I want to use these resources now to income for income for me, but I need to make a come up with a modern business model on this. So I'm not actually the one who are going to pick, but what I want to do, I want to guide tourists to pick here on this particular spot and make them pay me for that. You see, this is what kind of opportunities do the local people have to actually build up a business based on these resources. And so it's a question, but once a law is written down, you kind of freeze this to the time of when it was written down. It's difficult to modernize it, because when this act was written was back in the 50s. That was how people used cloudberry those days. They picked them and ate them themselves. But today, that's not a way to make money. I mean, if you want to make money, it's not the kilo of berries that are important as a source of food or income for that, but this is an interesting resource. People want to know, to see really good yield of, I mean, they are not going to pick much berry, but it's important that there are a lot of berry, so they can experience to see so many berries. I've never seen that before. I mean, tourists from southern Norway, which have it's like 4 meters between each berry, and when you bring them up in these mountains and you can see so much berry, it's like orange. Everything is orange. It's really a whole lot of it. So fun to pick berry then, but that they won't pick more than an hour. Then they are bored seeing it and experiencing it.
But you said that, okay, I want to use this resource, for example, guide people. But how about if the guy, not the owner or the man who has, or the person who has a long tradition, or his family has long tradition in using this? How about if he says that I'm investing into this area, I will bring 10 beehives here to make sure that the cloudberries get pollinated? I think that's also a good basis to say that I'm investing to this area.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So, but to be allowed to do that, to make this possible, I think that first of all, I think that we need to put up a total different management regime in inland northern Norway, and this means that the state Statsskog enterprise maybe has to go. Maybe we need to transform this into the same way as they have done in southern Norway, to create commons where the local people are the one who can decide on this. The local people can sit down and discuss, how do we want to use this area here? Who is going to profit from, let's say, from that industry, the tourist industry? Who's going to do that? Is that a company in Tromsø, or is that a company in Dividalen? That is the biggest question here.
What is the proportion of state-owned land in the area?
I can't remember exactly now. Do you know that? But I mean, in
Compared to private owned land.
oh, it's much bigger. In inland Troms, it's state-owned pretty much all, except from the small farms, parcels, and private land in the bottom of the valleys.
So there is enough resources for many people. So then you don't have to face those signs in many places.
No, you don't have to be so.
Excellent places.
It's because yes, the excellent places, and that is the thing. You know, I mean, if I'm going to build up a tourist company on that, guiding people for berry picking or whatever it is, it could be grouse shooting, it could be moose hunting or whatever. I mean, it needs to be good spots because the tourist demands high quality of the goods that you would like to deliver. So of course it needs to be good spots, and you need to know it, that this is my spot, and the spot is protected because we agree upon that in the common here. We agree upon that. This is the spot that, and you are allowed to put up the sign then to tell the others, please don't pick berry here. This is a berry, the commons decided on blah, 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 that this belongs to Mr. or whatever. And they are running a business here and blah, 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 something like that. Inge.
I agree with you. But I do also find it a bit worrying that you probably will go from state-owned to a privatization.
This is not a privatization. This is in between. It's not privatization. It's not 100% collectivization. It is a commonification. Can we say that? So it's like a hybrid between both of those things that actually can create the tragedy of the commons just as well. The privatization and the 100% collectivization is actually what
So where
kind of, because there is, you should remember, there is no tragedy in the commons, because Garrett Hardin never talked about commons. He talked about open free access. Commons are highly sophisticated, managed with local adapted rules to the local cultures.
So where do you find the that's the common? Because that's
Technically, Finnmarkseiedomen is a common, yes, but in practice, I wouldn't say it.
I think that the sign in the previous slide, it's kind of it tells that there is tradition of formal and informal ownership. So it's actually a good thing because it's something you can build on.
Yeah.
But I'm just comparing the situation in Finland. Everyman's rights in Finland, they are not in legislation. It's customary laws, which means that there is no detailed definition what are everyman's rights and what are not. There are just traditional practices and recommendations by the Ministry of Environment and so on. But it is said in the recommendations that if an area, forest area, is meant for some specific purpose, then it's possible to exclude this area from the everyman's right.
Yeah.
But there are absolutely no criteria for specific use. So that's also some kind of base for build up a bit stronger property rights for agroforestry areas. But of course, we needed new concepts and new practices. But isn't it so that because in Finland it is the fishing, rod fishing, for example, is kind of a part of everyman's right?
Yes,
yeah, but it is possible that if you have invested into your own water area, you have, for example, put some fish there, then you can apply from the officials that this water area can be excluded from this general fishing.
You have to apply the license.
Yes, but there are practices already Maybe something similar could be used with agroforestry areas.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jan Egil. I think a little bit running out of time, but I will give the floor to Mr. Rainer Peltola about some conclusion what we have done. I have to say that as in every good project research or development project, so we have got already good results. We are going on with the knowledge of this agroforestry, but it seems that when we get the one answer, we are creating a couple of questions, which means that this need for development and research on this field is, let's say, it's increasing, which is also good that we have been looking at the topic which creates also possibilities, challenges, whatsoever. But maybe Rainer will open up a little bit what kind of ideas have been raised up concerning the future needs for research and development, what kind of ideas we have for the future cooperation. So please, Rainer.
So pretty much the same topic as with Inger, but from totally different perspective. And it was really great to have Björn's presentation before this, because I think that this kind of fits well with the same topic. So when we are talking about agroforestry, let's go back to the basic definitions. Agroforestry is probably the most ancient food producing method if we are talking about crop production. So the traditional definition is that agroforestry refers to systems in which woody perennials have to be deliberately grown on the same unit of land as agricultural crops. So this traditional definition means that agroforestry is about food production. And what comes to our minds first when we think about this traditional definition, it's something which is extensive, it's manual, it is for household production, usually done in developing countries, and so on and so on. And it's important to notice that it's even difficult to put silvopasture under this agroforestry definition, although it is pretty clear that silvopasture is one practice of agroforestry. And these traditional agroforestry systems, which are usually for food production, for household use, for small-scale production, they are actually disappearing, because it is quite obvious that the production in the left side picture cannot compete with the food production in the right side picture if we are talking about food volumes. Or if we think about these agroforestry systems or practices which can be used in northern conditions, let's talk about bilberry and blueberry. On the left picture, you can see the high bush blueberry plantation, Vaccinium corymbosum. This plantation produces 4 to 5 tons of blueberries per hectare. And if we compare it to bilberry production, naturally occurring bilberry harvests or bilberry harvests which might be achieved by agroforestry, well, the average bilberry yield in Finnish forest is 10 to 35 kilos per hectare. And if you really promote the harvests, the yields by forest management practices, by securing the pollination services and so on, you may get 100 to 300 kilos per hectare. And that would be outstanding yield of bilberries. and it's still less than 10% of productivity as compared to high bush blueberry plantations. So if we are producing volumes in agroforestry, we are going to lose. But let's go back to the bilberry forest. How to make a good bilberry forest? Well, of course, you have to select first the area with good potential so that there is a local climate. Poor bilberry forest won't turn into good bilberry forest, whatever you are doing. You have to increase volume of the dead wood in the forest so that there are a lot of pollinating insects, not just bumblebees. You should perform thinnings so that there are enough light in the forest floor, but you should postpone clear cuttings. Or you should use continuous growing silviculture. You should establish flowering meadows for the pollinators, install maybe artificial nests. Make sure you have good access to the forest. If you have an excellent bilberry forest where you have to walk 5 kilometers in dense forest, it doesn't help much. And you can also do some forest floor vegetation manipulations. That's the way to make a good bilberry forest. And when you have done this, you will get good bilberry yields. Good. But what other things you have actually produced? You have increased the biodiversity, because whenever the bilberry yields increase, it means also increased biodiversity, because bilberry is one of the key species for biodiversity. It's such an important food plant for several birds and insects and voles and so on. And of course, all the actions you have done here, they also increase the biodiversity. And since you are postponing the clear cuttings, the final fellings, you have increased carbon sequestration. And of course, you have also created landscapes which most of us think are pleasant. So there is a quite strong consensus that agroforestry systems have positive impacts on several ecosystem services: soil erosions, soil fertility, biodiversity, landscape, wildfire prevention, carbon sequestration, water quality, and so on. But it is also generally known that it's quite difficult for the forest or farm enterprise to capture the benefits of improved ecosystem services in financial terms. You have increased biodiversity in your forest. To whom do you send the bill? So I think that the potential here, and I think that Björn Egil agrees with me, is that when you have created good bilberry forest, you have also created an excellent base for services, for well-being services, recreational services, health promoting services, education, unique experience, and so on and so on. And some examples here. The reindeer tourism is actually quite old business model, at least in Finnish Lapland. And nowadays it seems to be that the sales in reindeer tourism are starting to be on the same level as in traditional reindeer herding. And in traditional reindeer herding, the income comes from the meat and maybe the skins and so on. And this seems to be so important branch of reindeer business that even the Reindeer Herders Association has published a quality guide for farmers who are operating in reindeer tourism. What should you take into account when you want to run reindeer tourism business? And this is an example in Rovaniemi. Reindeer farm experience from Rovaniemi. duration 2 hours to 3 hours, price 70 euros per person. That's the price. I think some of us has bought reindeer meat. How much does it nowadays to buy half a reindeer calf? Vasa? 13 euros per kilo. Yeah.
Yes, it's about that.
So with 100 euros, you can buy half of animal, half of a young animal.
I agree very much in the logic in this, but where do the tourists come from? They come from
90
quite far away.
90% of the tourists come from abroad.
Yes, and then, you know, the traveling, it's not that sustainable. Yeah.
Well,
But that was maybe a negative comment.
well, that's a general problem in all tourism, which
So maybe
goes
it's
to distant areas.
you know, better to flip it than just eat the animal. Yeah, just to, but I
Yeah.
do agree with your logic, and so.
But well, these are just cases and business models which are based on agroforestry systems. Reindeer herding is definitely one agroforestry system. And then there is another concept in Kiuruvesi. I tried to look on the map whether it is in Kolarctic area, and it's Kiuruvesi. No.
It's not Savo.
Yeah, but it's so close to the adjoining area of border of Kainuu.
Yes.
But anyway, it really doesn't matter because this concept can be used elsewhere also. So what they are selling is green care silvopasture. It means that they take groups to forest with the sheep and with the herding dogs, and then they show how the dog works and let the clients to be in contact with the animals and tell how the forest grazing works with sheep and so on and so on. 250 euros per group. I really don't know. I have never bought a whole sheep. But I doubt that it may be a few hundred euros, the whole animal. Yeah. And then there is this Pelkinvuori forest garden. This is an interesting concept also. They have created, well, forest garden. This is in southern Finland, but of course this can be applied anywhere. So they have combined a nursery garden, recreation park, restaurant services, courses, events in an environment which is mixture of forestry and garden and food production and so on. It actually looks quite magnificent. I might pay 5 euros to go there. But of course, they have a lot of other income sources. And there are this berry picking excursion in Rovaniemi also. 75 euros per group, or was it per person? I'm not sure. Anyway, you can see their catch here. I think it's might be 200 grams of bilberry here. So just start to count what is the price of 1 kilo of bilberry here. It's about 375 euros per kilo. And this is a picture what is often presented, how the value addition works. When you have bilberry, you will get 1 euro per kilo. When you have processed it to packed freeze berries, you will get 8 euros per kilo. When you have processed it to concentrate, you might get 50 euros per kilo. And when it's as in a cream, it will be 500 euros per kilo. But in this concept, it's still the berries, but the price almost equals the northern screen over here. I actually don't know what is happening during this safari. Maybe I should get myself a ticket. But if I was the guide here, of course, I need to take the clients to place where there is plenty of bilberries. And then I would tell them a lot of stories, what is happening here, how the floral primordia developed already during the autumn, what is happening during the winter time, when the flowering starts and what initiates the flowering, what kind of pollinators there are, what is happening during the ripening, how popular the berry picking is in Finland, what are the health benefits of berries, and so on and so on. So I hope they are doing the same thing, but I'm a bit doubtful whether the guide has all the necessary knowledge here.
And of course, you can compound, and as far as I know, some companies are compounding that after this trip, they will take you to kitchen, and then you get instructions, and you may do your own jam, for example,
yeah.
which you can take with you when you.
Yeah.
But of course, it's additional
Yeah.
75.
But if this excursion or safari happens in an agroforestry place, that would be a fantastic addition to the story, because then the guide could tell that we have taken care that there are a lot of berries for you. Look, we have a lot of artificial nests here for the pollinators, and we have postponed the final cuttings, and this is all done because we want to make sure that you will enjoy this experience.
They surely have some stories, but they might be something like that. You can get a bear here or some wolves, but they are not dangerous.
Okay, and then there is one quite interesting concept. You probably heard about escape rooms. And there is one company in Repovesi who are using forests for these escape games. Of course, they don't tell the details because that's the whole idea behind these escape games, but that's also a good idea. So when we are talking about tourism and services which could be connected to agroforestry systems, it's actually about experiences. So consumers demand meaningful experiences. They don't want to hug reindeers. They want to have experiences with the reindeers. It seems to be a small difference, but it's actually a very important difference. So I think that here is currently the best business potential for agroforestry systems in northern areas. And of course, it still produces timber. That doesn't disappear anywhere. You may have to wait a bit longer for the timber incomes, but they are still there.
So, but what about if you, I mean, okay, today we are producing timber, are producing money, you know that. But if you wait for, you said 20 years or maybe 25 years before cutting, how much do they need to have like compensation from, for instance, from the state? I mean, this is like what we are doing. What are we doing in agriculture? We are giving subsidies to farmers to restore cultural landscape, to keep landscape, and because there's an environmental point in that. I mean, so, but here we have a climate issue, and is it possible to think that we can construct environmental measures to compensate for the loss of economy there. So there is no loss. The only thing is that we are gaining this in addition to.
Yes. Well, of course, there are already markets for carbon dioxide compensation, but currently forest owners do not have access to those markets. But I think that there are several initiatives for that. I said that if you increase biodiversity, who do you sell the bill? But I would say that when you increase carbon sequestration, the situation that you can actually send a bill to someone is much closer. So yes, here is a lot of potential. But it's not reality yet.
No, but I mean, it could be certain recommendations from. I mean, if you think about a future research project, I mean, like it's good to have the already finished the recommendation before we start the project.
There are a lot of people working in that area, in that field.
Yeah,
sure. But one more slide. So about the definitions, let's go back to definitions. There was this, I started this presentation with this rather narrow definition. There are also wider definition of agroforestry. It's a multifaceted, multi-component and multi-product activity with many purposes and benefits. Nice definition, but it doesn't tell actually anything. So I would say maybe Barents agroforestry would be something which combines elements of forestry, agriculture, and multiple use of forests. And it produces food, ecosystem services, and areas for nature-based experiences. If you think that we should somehow modify this definition, I'm more than ready to accept it. And of course, then we have to start to talk about what is the difference between agroforestry and multiple use of forests. But maybe we do it in the evening a bit further.
Okay, thank you, Rainer. So discussion will continue. We have taken a little bit more time than scheduled, which is normally a mark of important and good seminar. But anyway, we will now stop this session, and as you have been informed, so this event will be found later from the internet, so you can go through it later, and we will also send these links for the people who were not able to participate this event this time. Okay, thank you very much. There is still some people online, and we will definitely continue the discussion with these topics we have handled today. There will be let's say, as we have said, there is plenty of money available for good research projects, also in the let's say in the Northern Scandinavia frame, and unfortunately, as you know, we don't have a new Colatic program due to the political situation, but in Nordic context, we can apply money from Interreg Aurora, and also in a little bit larger context from the Northern Periphery and Arctic program, and this program will be opened soon. In fact, the Northern Periphery and Arctic program first call has been opened, I think today or yesterday. So it's already open, and yes. Okay, but thank you. Thank you for participation, and let's continue the discussions, and there is some people who will be also taking part of the pilot work, who has been taking part and who will take part of that. So the work continues.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.